My name's Chris Jobson. I work for SAP. I'm an architect. I'm actually based out of the UK, one of the few SAP engineers, developers actually in the UK. So today we're going to be talking about demystifying enterprise mobile application development. Maybe you should have a session on demystifying audio presentations. So if you're in for a different topic, this is your chance to escape. Nobody's moving, right? Good. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Focus on basically how do you build enterprise solutions. This is the agenda. It's not very complicated. I've only got 20 minutes. In fact, I've got 15 minutes now. So a little bit of introduction. We're going to talk about SAP's business technology platform, and with a particular focus on the SAP mobile services components of that, and then drilling down to something that's more interesting to you guys. You're all Android developers, I'm assuming. That's why you're here. We're going to look into a bit more on the SAP's BTP SDK for Android. A bit of a mouthful. And then a few closing comments at the end. So not a very complicated agenda. Let's start. Next slide. You often start with some sort of business solution. You have maybe a custom device. It's a barcode scanner. Maybe you're scanning stock levels or something in a shop. You want to connect to some sort of back-end system. Obviously, for SAP, the back-end system will be an SAP Business Suite or HANA system. Soon, though, things become a bit more complicated. You have more devices. You have different back-end systems. Maybe you've got sort of analytics in there. You've got sort of crash reporting, logging, all sorts of stuff that you want to integrate into your solutions, and you've got them spread over a number of different devices. So life becomes complicated, hence a nice messy graph. I think the keynote, I better not try and do that, get too excited and wave my hands around. The keynote speaker was going on about complexity for the sake of complexity. Anyway, you get the idea. It's easy to build up complicated solutions. In SAP, we've developed something called the BTP, or Business Technology Platform. This is an attempt to try and make this integration, this building of mobile solutions, easier to manage, easier to handle. We designed it so that many different devices of different types, iOS, Android, whatever, can connect to a variety of business systems, mostly hosted by SAP, not necessarily hosted by SAP, and managed through a lot of cloud services, focusing in particular on something called SAP Mobile Services. So that's, if you like, the goal that we're aiming for, so that life becomes a little bit less complicated, not quite so much custom coding and this, that, and the other, but a hopefully coherent set of business services hosted in the cloud that allow you to build out custom solutions and off-the-shelf solutions using our platform. So that's, if you like, the goal. So what about SAP? Some of you, I guess most of you, have heard of SAP. If you're in the business world, SAP's a company that most people have heard of. In the consumer space, maybe not so much. But I've heard something like 75% of all business transactions worldwide probably go for an SAP system at some point. So it's out there almost everywhere. Almost every large manufacturing company uses SAP. We have something like over 400,000 customers and over 100,000 employees. And actually this year, 2022, is our 50th anniversary. So the company's been around since 1972. So it's well established in the business space. It's been producing business software for a long time. And now that in the world now of cloud and so on, then SAP is providing support for cloud-based solutions where you want to access business systems through secure, well-managed access points in the cloud. And BTP, Business Technology Platform, is our kind of offering in that space. And mobile services is a subcomponent of that. So there's a set of cloud services that are specifically targeted at mobile device usage. It comes with as part of the overall umbrella concept of BTP, the business platform that SAP has. And the mobile services component provides all those kind of services that you would expect to find in business solutions. So obviously securely accessing back-end systems which might have sensitive data in them, propagating the identity of the user. You've logged in onto your device. How do you know my identity is passed through to the back-end systems properly? How do you manage logging? How do you manage tracing? How do you manage user onboarding? How do you manage push messages being pushed to devices? There's a whole slew of stuff that's provided through the BTP mobile services component. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, so we're not really going to focus on that. But drilling down onto the client side, in order to build a solution, you need to have the ability to actually code that up on your client device. So in order to make the consumption of all those services, as straightforward as possible, SAP provides a set of SDK components that allow you to build out solutions for your appropriate device. So obviously, if you're working on Android, we have an SDK targeted at Android users. If you're building it for iOS, then obviously we have an SDK for iOS consumers. If you're building something more cross-platform, we also have cross-platform development tools, something like Mobile Development Kit, or even template-driven solutions around something like mobile cards, which I'm not really going to go into it at all here. But we have a wide range of tools and support for building solutions that run on mobile devices, even completely no-code solutions as well. But today we're just going to drill down a little bit more into the SAP BTP SDK for Android. Sorry about the name. They ought to come up with something a bit more fancy than that, but that's what it is. So the SDK is designed to work seamlessly with Android Studio. I guess if you're Android developers, you know, your places of development is inside Android Studio. So it works seamlessly with Android Studio. It's a plugin that you can install into your Android Studio. It allows you to build, and SAP does this internally, so we have a load of SAP internally developed apps that use this SDK. We also have a lot of customer-built apps. So customers, I've mentioned 440,000 customers. Many of those actually build their own apps for their own particular purposes. They use the SDK. We also work with a lot of partners that build the apps as well as using our SDK. And the SDK's purpose is obviously to fit inside Android Studio and provide the necessary tooling so you can go about building your apps, and then make use of all those BTP and mobile services APIs that are hosted in the cloud seamlessly without you having to worry about coding all those fine-grained stuff, which is difficult to do, and get right and be secure. And then ultimately, at the bottom, of course, you gain access to all your business data, which is the real reason why you're building the app. I mean, you're not building the app just to use the SDK. You're not building the app to use BTP Cloud Services. You're building the app so you can gain access to business data, which contains interesting stuff that helps you do whatever job you're supposed to be doing. So that's the goal. But of course, when it comes down to building the app, building an app is, you know, there's a lot going on to build an app, especially a business app that has to get access to secure data, that has to onboard users, that has to maybe cache data locally, has to maybe provide secure storage. There's a lot of work involved in doing that, as well as actually building your domain-specific UIs. You know, you want to actually provide some sort of UI to the customer or the end user. You know, you'd like to concentrate on doing that. You'd like to concentrate on actually building an experience for your user that's relevant for their business. You don't want to spend all your time worrying about how do I code up my app to securely connect to this back-end system, which I don't even know where it is. How do I build my app so that maybe the app can be shared across multiple users? You know, in the morning, maybe it's being used by Joe Bloggs, in the afternoon by Carol Smith. How do I manage to make sure that that's done in a way that doesn't break security between those users? Things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done in building out the application and ensuring that I meet all those business critical requirements that I have to do in order to get my app to be accepted by the end users and the customers. So obviously that's the purpose of the SDK. So we provide the SDK that helps you do that grunt work quickly. Obviously you're going to have to spend some of your time thinking about the architecture of the app and how you plumb it and how you get it to work and how you actually integrate, but all the hard work, all the heavy lifting, all the work that you need to do to ensure that the app's secure, that you're connecting properly to your backend systems, that's provided by the SDK. And so what I'm going to do now is give you a quick demo. So obviously I've only got, how much have I got left now? So 10 minutes or so before the end of the session. So we're going to now hopefully jump into a demo showing you what the SDK looks like. And if all goes to plan, which of course it never does, we're in Android Studio. I've installed the SDK. You can, if you're interested, you can just get yourself a trial account on BTP. Just go to, just Google SAP HANA trial, and you'll be able to get yourself easily enough a trial account. You should be able to download the SDK quite simply as well. Installing it on your laptop and into Android Studio is a very easy thing. This is running in, I think my Android Studio is Chipmunk version, but I think it's, what's the next one? The next version of it supports that as well. So it should be compatible to the Android Studio that you're using. And so what we have here, and what I'm going to do here is demonstrate how to actually, the SDK comes with a number of components. Obviously there's the SDK that allows you to actually interact and connect to the business services or present the UI. Part of the SDK is also a wizard that allows you to actually quickly build a running sample application that uses all those SDK components. So what I'm going to do now is actually use the wizard to create an application, and then we'll do a little bit of a deep dive into what the SDK looks like and the various components when I actually build this application. So we'll create a new, and you can see here as part of the menu, there's an option here, new SAP BTP Android app. Sorry, I'll have to do that again. I think I didn't do that right. Okay, so up comes the wizard. One of the first things it asks you to do is provide your connectivity details to your BTP account setup. I've already filled it out in here because I haven't got time to go about entering all that information, but obviously in your case you would have your own unique configuration details. Next thing to do is going to say what type of app how are we going to use this SDK? There we have three options. One is I could just override an existing app that I've built already, just maybe update or replace the settings. Create a new one from scratch, which is probably most likely to be the case. But for this demo here, I'm just going to click the sample. The sample is just like using Create, but it has a whole load of pre-filled options in here just to speed this demo up. Otherwise, we'd be here for a few minutes too long and you'd be bored. I'm going to give it a particular name to separate it from one I'd done earlier, just to avoid clashes. Call it ComSap Android Wizard Sample DroidCon. Click Next. Now, this application here is connecting to some business data. This business data, in this particular sample case, is an OData business service running in the cloud. We'll talk a little bit about OData in a moment, in case you've never heard of that. So it's in reality, if you're building your own solution, you're probably going to be talking to your own business services, your own back-end systems. But in this scenario, I'm talking to one that comes as part of the trial landscape. It's just a sample set of data. So it contains things like products and customers and stuff like that. So I'm going to select that, click Next, and create a project. I've already pre-created a project for backup purposes, so I'm going to give this a slightly different name, just to avoid it clashing with one I've already had. So I've given it a name. This is going to give me an Android project, a completely built out, fully working, correctly configured Android project, all using Kotlin as well. So it's done that. Click Finish. Sorry, one more step. In order to build this sample application, I have some choices I can make. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to choose one or two here. For example, the first one allows me to build a multi-user application. Basically, the application I have here will allow me to switch users. So user data will be stored securely. So when I switch user to another user, the other user won't be able to access the previous user's data because of secure storage. There will be all the UI screens will be automatically built that allow you to support that. We'll also, just for the sake of it, have some offline support. This allows the application I'm building to actually cache data in the offline mode in case you don't have guaranteed network connectivity. I can do that. And then that automatically provides all the synchronization capabilities so that you can sync data between your offline cache and the back-end systems. For many scenarios, you don't need offline. You can do it purely on online, but I'm just choosing offline here. There are other options I could choose, but for this purpose of this demo, I'll skip those and click Finish. Now that's going off and actually building the application. It's connecting to the back-end BTP systems, creating all the necessary artifacts in the back-end system, creating all the Android Studio local artifacts that are required to build the application. While it's doing that, I'm just going to flip back to the PowerPoint slides. And, oops, there we are. Okay, good. So a little bit explaining what the SDK looks like. So while the app's been built in the background, you will see in a moment what it looks like, but I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview about the SDK itself. The SDK is really in three pieces, so to keep it relatively simple. We have at the top level something called SAP Fiori, explain that in a moment, Foundation and OData. Let's drill down. SAP Fiori is primarily concerned with presenting UI controls. Every application you build is almost certainly going to have UI involved in it somewhere. So we, as part of the SDK, provide a set of coherent, consistent controls built using what we call the Fiori design language. So the Fiori design language is a SAP-wide design language that is meant to provide a consistent, well thought out user experience across a wide range of different platforms. We're targeting Android here, so the design pattern that's using here is very Android specific, so it will use certain Android kind of gestures and styles and patterns that Android users will be very used to. If you're working on iOS, you would have an iOS flavor of that design. If you were building a web-based solution for browsers, then you would have a web flavored version of that design. So the Fury design is meant to provide a coherent design across all SAP business UIs, but targeting the specific use case. So in our case, it's going to be Android. So you have things like, maybe a data table. Often a lot of business data is in some sort of tabular form. I'd like to be able to express that. Maybe a simple business data entity. I want to represent that as an object. Okay, I can do that via nice controls. Maybe I want to do something a bit more fancy, embed, say, a map into a UI control. There are controls to do that. Maybe do some charting. Then I can actually build a charting-based solution using charting packages. Maybe something, another interesting variation, maybe I want to do some OCR-based interactions. So again, I've got the UI controls to do that. So that's the SAP Fury UI level. The next level we provide is something called Foundation. Foundation is aimed to provide all the controls and components that allow you to actually do the interaction with your cloud-based services. So, authentication, propagating my identity correctly, managing logging, client log uploads, secure storage on the device, caching data, all those kind of things which are not UI related but are absolutely vital to make a functioning business-ready application. That comes in the Foundation layer. And the third main component is something called OData, the OData layer. OData APIs are APIs that expose business data over the web, over internet, HTTP-based communications, but are metadata described. So you have like a business API that exposes, say, products or customers or sales orders or something like that. You can describe the actual structure of that data through metadata. And then as part of our SDK, we have tooling that allows the SDK to interact with the APIs that expose this OData, determine all the structure of all the objects, including their relationships, so navigational relationships, foreign key, primary key kind of relationships if you're into database technology. All that stuff can be extracted from the metadata definition, and we can automatically create all the model classes that you would typically need to build in a client device application to allow you to represent all those business entities. So all that kind of grunt work that you would normally have had to do by hand, we can do it by just querying the OData services, using the SDK tooling and components that we have. Bang, you get all the classes built for you for free. So that's so those are the three main components. So if I'm going to go back to the application, which hopefully, if I go back to my Android Studio. So this is the Android Studio. It's still doing, I think it's probably doing some Gradle syncing at the moment. So it's built the studio, it's now doing the Gradle syncs. I've already got one that's pre-built in order just to save a minute or two. If you wait a little while, you would see this up and running, but I'm going to skip that because it's just wasting minutes, of which I probably don't have very many left. So this is, hopefully you can see the details on this. This is an application I built earlier on. It's exactly the same as what I just did then. So it contains a fully functional Android application. It's got the usual Android, manifest files. It's got all the Java structure that you would expect to find. It's got all the the activity files, everything here that you would expect in a fully functional working Android application. It's got all the onboarding stuff, everything like that, all done for you. Now, once you've done this, once you've built using the SDK wizard, which actually builds you a fully functional working application, you're then in a position to actually take that application, modify it, and adjust it to your own personal needs. But this is obviously a demo here. What I'm going to do is actually show you it running, and hopefully it's going to work. So here, so again, a lot of these controls here are just shipped with the SDK, and you get them for free, and we're just packaging them up and showing them running here in the app. So here we just click Get Started. It's like a welcome screen or a splash screen. End user license agreement, typical thing you get on most business applications. Now I'm going to log in, authenticate. I'm going to actually type something now. I'm going to And I've got to remember my password. Hopefully no one's recording this. It's very secure. Log in. Okay, another typical control here. This allows you to set a passcode. This is actually controlled by the backend BTP cloud services. So the cloud services can be set up to say, yes, you must have a passcode enabled to lock the application. So I'm just going to, I think I'm going to be kicked off the stage in a few moments. It'll be a couple of minutes. So now we're syncing data. Again, this is a standard control that comes with the app. Just syncing all the data from that OData service I mentioned before. Take 2 seconds or so, and we'll see the data sync complete. And I'm probably not going to have time to actually show you it operating, but you have to take my word that this is connecting to the real BTP services that I already had pre-configured. So now we have data. And there's an example of a customer. I can go and edit the customer. Again, these are standard UI controls that you get with the SDK. You could have hand-coded this application yourself if you wanted to, and the wizard here has just built it for you, and it's a fully functional application. So I can go in here and actually modify this. And that, oops. Just make some changes. And then save those. And that's actually underneath, update to the local data cache. A synchronization will be kicked off in this panel. So I'm not going to bother waiting for the synchronization. I can actually, trigger a synchronization here. That will have actually uploaded the data to the backend system. And I have a fully functional, completely standard Android SDK-based application that you're now able to adapt and modify and build for your own purposes. All in a matter of a few clicks, using the standard SDK component that you could, if you wanted to, just have built yourself. There's no reason why you can't have also built that yourself. But with this Wizard SDK, you've got a quick way to actually getting something up and running. And certainly from my experience of building a lot of applications, having something that's working against real business data, even though it might not be exactly what you want to start with, is a good way of bootstrapping yourself up. Starting from scratch, building everything from ground up. Maybe at the end it might be a great application, but it takes a long time. Here we have a fully functioning application in just a few seconds. And I think at this point just a point to say that the SDK that we have here, SAP uses it internally for a lot of our app development. I mean, obviously some apps have been built some years ago before the SDK, but all new app development is being within SAP on iOS, and Android is now using this SDK internally. And obviously it's been enhanced and improved all the time with improved design. As we enhance the Fury design language, then that's reflected in the SDK. The SDK automatically provides theming. If you decide, for example, to brand an application to meet a particular customer's requirements, then you can just theme it at a click of a switch, if you like. That's all integrated in there. All the UI controls are designed to be coherent and consistent across the board as well. So all the fonts, colors, background colors, interaction patterns are all, again, specifically designed to work well with each other. And again, as I said, underneath, providing all the secure interactions with the backend system. So there you go. I think I've managed to squeeze my session into the time just. And is it going to flip on? Yeah, so there you go. So then I had just one more slide. That was just to prove that we actually have real productive apps out there in the field using this SDK. And if you want to, you can. There are links on here to get more information. I think there's a handout you can get to. Oops. And if you scan the QR code, you can get access to the handout as well, which gives you more details, including a broader, slightly more extensive set of PowerPoint slides than I did today, plus links to a bunch of tutorials. Download the SDK yourself, get yourself a trial account, actually play with it, and see for yourself that it works. Okay, done. Thank you.